especially in this unprecedented time we're living in, if there was one group of allies that we could lean on, I believe fungi are really the greatest potentiators to really invigorate our vital force and activate our health, our immune system, support our stress response.
You're listening to the Happy Doc Student Podcast, a podcast dedicated to providing clarity to the often mysterious doctoral process. Do you feel like you're losing your mind? Let me and my guests show you how to put more joy in your journey and graduate with your sanity, health, and relationships intact. I'm your host, Dr. Heather Frederick, and this is episode 8, where we explore the magic of functional mushrooms. Researchers consistently find, across discipline and across countries, that doctoral students report high levels of chronic stress. And chronic stress wreaks havoc on pretty much every system in the body. We all know if you're in a human body and you're dealing with chronic stress, it's not serving you. And that is why I am so excited about today's guest. Danielle Ryan Broida is a registered herbalist of the American Herbalists Guild, a certified holistic nutritionist, an instructor of mycology, and I'm going to save you a Google search. Yes, she teaches about fungi. She's the National Educator of Four Sigmatic. After she received her BA in Environmental Studies and Philosophy from Whitman College, she studied Ayurveda in India and became a certified yoga instructor on the banks of the Ganges River. She then worked with a naturopathic doctor in Indonesia, where she became a certified raw chef and detox coach. But it was leading trekking adventures in the backcountry of Thailand, where she became particularly fascinated by herbal medicine while also becoming fluent in Thai. Danielle is a key player in the worldwide mushroom movement and has devoted her life to exciting and inspiring others about the everyday magic of functional mushrooms. Welcome to the show, Danielle.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be with you.
So let's start with your story. How does one get interested in functional mushrooms?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And the Spark Notes way that I explain it is the mushrooms find you rather than you going out and finding the mushrooms. So it's quite opposite of having an idea from, the time you're a little girl, I want to be an author or a doctor, whatever it might be, a writer. It's following what was really motivating and inspiring to me each moment of the way. And I landed focusing on mushrooms as my career. And it all makes so much sense now. Every part of it was what lit me up in that moment, what was exciting, what was inspiring me. And it was almost like a snowball gathering tools and information and wisdom to be able to land where I am now. And maybe it's just another step on the journey.
If you're listening, I think the mushrooms are finding you right now. And this idea of being on a journey and being nimble, I think so many people start a doctoral program with this end goal in mind, but part of this podcast is about helping people find inspiration, find where it may be that the universe is taking them. And the universe took you to functional mushrooms. And, I'm thinking, many people out there probably have a limited view. It's something that maybe pops up in your yard and you need to pluck it, or you put it on a pizza topping. But functional mushrooms, maybe just educate the audience. What are they?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an herbalist by trade, and functional mushrooms are under the herbal umbrella of one of the most ancient natural remedies that humans have been using for a wide variety of ailments all across the world. So it's actually nothing new to use mushrooms as medicine for their functional benefits, but it's pretty new to us in the West. So to zoom out a little bit and understand what we're actually talking about, it's important to recognize that fungi are their own biological kingdom. So we have the animal kingdom we're part of, we have the plant kingdom. Fungi are their own kingdom, and it's massive. We are still discovering how many species actually reside within this kingdom. But what we do know is that there's at least 6 times as many species of fungi as there are all plants on Earth. They're medicinal, they're potent, they have studied constituents that have a they have a beneficial effect on the human body. So that's what
when we talk about beneficial effects, we're talking mood, right? Anxiety, depression, cognitive function, immune system. I mean, the research out there about these functional mushrooms is really something that people should be paying attention to.
Yes, absolutely. And especially in this unprecedented time we're living in, if there was one group of allies that we could lean on, I believe fungi are really the greatest potentiators to really invigorate our vital force and activate our health, our immune system, support our stress response, right? These kind of big overarching things that we all need support with. I think of them as vitalists. So I'm trained in the vitalist tradition of herbalism. It's very different than allopathic, right? So rather than treating a symptom, I'm looking at what's the cause. And the fungi are very mysterious, even in the way that they work in our bodies, which is what makes them so magical, right? So they have this way of revitalizing, nourishing, building the roots of our system. So addressing our gut health, our immune system, our stress response. And from these places, the body has the tools to heal whatever external ailment it might be experiencing on its own without, necessarily addressing the headache or the sleep issues or the weight issues. It's building so that the body has the tools to recover naturally, long-term, sustainably.
This is an intelligent, natural substance, which is different. You've talked about it in some of your other videos and educational materials about the difference between an immune booster and an immune modulator.
It goes without saying that we're all looking for ways to support our immune system. And I'd encourage us taking that same approach that we were just speaking of, rather than having a Band-Aid, is how can we build the system up so much that whatever we are around and whatever antigens we walk into, our body isn't a host to carry that, right? So it really shifts from a victim role into a place of empowerment. When you go into a typical grocery store or maybe a natural grocery store, pharmacy, and you ask where are the mushroom supplements, they'll almost always be in the aisle labeled immune. And there's a reason for that. One of the most common compounds in our functional mushrooms is this complex sugar chain. It's a polysaccharide. And in mushrooms, they're beta-glucans. There's a couple different types, but for today's purposes, just beta-glucans. And what they do in the body is they're called immune modulators. Okay. And so, as you mentioned, it's very different than most of the other herbs in that immune aisle, where we have our echinaceas or our golden seals, berberine herbs that temporarily stimulate our immune system to fight off that acute invader. And stimulants are fine short term, but what they're doing is they're tricking our body. Literally, you take echinacea, or spilanthes is a new analog to echinacea that I've been really excited about lately, and you get this tingly feeling on your tongue. You take an echinacea tincture. And what that is a compound called alkaloids. And what those do is they literally are tricking your system. They say, okay, there's a foreign antigen in here. And in response, the body ramps up production of white blood cells to fight off what it thinks is an invader in the system. Okay, and so that's great, at the very first signs of maybe feeling a little sniffle or getting some sort of sickness. But more than 3, 5, 7 days, it becomes really dangerous to trick our system and ramp it up over and over again every day. And so what the functional mushrooms do is they have the ability to either stimulate immune activity or suppress immune activity based on the body that's ingesting that mushroom extract. Okay, so this is that modulation. The metaphor I like to use is cruise control for the immune system. Okay, we all have a different speed in which we function at optimally. Say, my speed is 70 miles an hour and someone else's is 65. And if we become immune compromised, right? A time like now, change of season, you're stressed, your immune system becomes compromised, that 65 mile an hour vital range begins to drop. right? You become more vulnerable. And so you can take an extract of, say, a reishi mushroom, and it would stimulate your immune system to bring you back to that 65 level. But there's a lot of bodies in our population that are dealing with autoimmune conditions. And this is where I chose to focus in my private practice. And in autoimmunity, there's too much immune activity happening. So rather than being at 65, that body is working at 75, right? There's overactive immune cells running through the body. And you can take, in that autoimmune body, they can take a same amount of the same reishi extract, and it would suppress immune activity to bring their body back into their level of equilibrium, that 65 range. And so, right, just like cruise control on the highway, these mushrooms are working with your body, being able to have this higher intelligence, absolutely, of what your body needs at changing times.
So they truly are magical.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
And I'm guessing, I may have a few listeners wondering, are they talking about magic mushrooms? So maybe just a short little, these are legal mushrooms that we're talking about.
Yes. Yeah. And I love that you bring this up because it's important to just ask. I think a lot of people that are really new to the fungi world are like, oh my God, what are they talking about? Can I ask? Is this appropriate? And something that our company Four Sigmatic loves to do is really lean into the stereotypes. So lean into some of our hashtags are on shrooms and everyday magic. And we want to have discussions be accessible. And part of that is learning that functional mushrooms, these reishi and lion's mane and chaga, are completely legal everywhere in the world. There's no psychoactive properties to them. Very different than class of more psychoactive mushrooms that have most commonly a constituent called psilocybin. So there's this kind of interesting thing that has happened with our words as plant medicine has evolved to, and especially within, the plant kingdom, when we hear the word medicinal, we often think of cannabis now, right? Medicinal plant. And so it shifted from, we're not talking about mint or chamomile anymore when we hear medicinal plant, or at least in the commonplace, it's like, oh, okay, cannabis. And I see that being conflated to the world of fungi as well. So rather than saying, I used to call reishi and lion's mane and chaga, these legal species, medicinal mushrooms. So you'll see in many books, depending on what you're reading or looking at, they'll use the word medicinal. But in the current day where we're having revolutionary laws changed in Denver and in, the Bay Area and in Oregon, where these psychedelic species are moving up into the ranks of becoming, either decriminalized or now legalized in Oregon. And so we're switching the diction a bit. So when we talk about the quote unquote illegal or psychedelic species, I will more commonly refer to those as medicinal. And when we talk about the legal everyday mushrooms that are safe and, that we add into our coffee and our protein, those are functional. It's kind of
okay. I love the way you've used those terms. And for those of you that have been listening, you know that no topic is off topic for this podcast. And if you'd like a show on medicinal mushrooms and you've got something to say, let me know. But we're going to keep this show to these functional mushrooms, which probably at this point people are saying, Danielle, tell me how to get my hands on some of these.
Yes.
Is it a pill that you pop? Do you eat them? How do you get them in your body?
There's lots of different ways to purchase the end product, but you have to know what's happened to the mushroom along the way. So not all mushroom powders are created equal. Not all tinctures are created equal. The point is the word extraction must be on whatever end product you're getting your hands on. And that's the way you'll know that the beneficial compounds have been basically released, are now bioavailable for your body. So it really comes down to, rather than a specific form, a tea, a tincture, a pill, a powder, it's what's going to be easy for you to take. Are you someone that makes your coffee every morning, or that makes a smoothie, or that really enjoys the process of cooking and putting together that which is nourishing your body, then I definitely recommend Four Sigmatic products that you can add into or replace common routines. I used to tell my clients the medicine doesn't work if you don't take it. And it's so simple, but it's so fitting. Like, you could have the most powerful, incredible formula perfectly designed for your body. And if it tastes horrible, if it's not convenient, if it doesn't fit into your routine, the chances are you're just not going to do it.
And I love this idea of making it part of your routine. And I'm assuming a lot of the listeners do drink a hot beverage, probably coffee. And that's actually how I came to have you on this show, Danielle, is because I love the Four Sigmatic coffee and actually brought it on a trip recently where a number of colleagues and I were hanging out, and they asked, who brewed the coffee today and what was that? Because it tasted so good. You might think drinking a mushroom, ooh, it might be bitter, but the coffee is so delicious. And there's a couple of different types with different mushrooms.
The two that I really feel passionately about for this audience are Reishi and lion's mane. And Reishi is the queen of mushrooms. Literally, that's her name. In all of traditional Chinese medicine, species are ranked based on their value, their potency, how much medicinal constituents they have for the range of bodies that they're able to be used for. And Reishi is the number one herbal natural medicine in the entire traditional Chinese medicine Materia Medica, right? The entire encyclopedia of natural allies that they use. And there's thousands of species that are used as medicine. So many reasons for that. Reishi has the most studied amount of compounds. At Four Sigmatic, it's a kind of great example. We give every mushroom a little word or a character to make it really easy and bite-sized, so you know when and why to take these species. And Reishi is our chill mushroom. Okay, so think of her as your best friend for all things stress support, right? And when we're talking about treating the body from the cause, not the symptom, not using Band-Aids, really building that life force, revitalizing our body, as you started this conversation with, stress is unavoidable, and it has to be part of the picture to rebuild a strong body from the place that the symptoms might be coming from. And stress is like a big blinder that turns off all the other systems in the body. Everything else goes dark when we're in a state of stress. And especially students, or those thinking about a big life, career, several year path in front of them, right? Can I do this? Am I able to do this? Even along the path, there's this inevitable stress. And even if you're not on that path, driving, the news, like the environmental world that we're living in, whether it's our water or air, there is stressors constantly, and they're completely unavoidable. And the way that our body has evolved to deal with stress is pretty archaic, but it's what our body knows. And if you think about evolutionarily, the way that we dealt with stress, typically stress only came when there was a really acute threat in front of us, like a giant animal coming to take our life. And the body floods the system with stress hormones to give us enough stamina to fight or flight, right? To fight that giant, whatever it might be, saber-toothed tiger, or to run and save our life. And so there's this incredible amount of energy, of stimulus, of hormones pumping through our blood system. And the body is fully focused on keeping ourselves alive. And so in that acute fight or flight state, when we're stressed, think of that, ancient human that was fighting that tiger. Do we think that human was getting proper messages about if they were hungry or if they were tired or what they were doing later? All of this it's like the other systems of the body are on airplane mode because we've got to keep ourselves alive. And so many times people say, I'm experiencing this range of symptoms. And then I say, how's your stress response? And they're like, oh, it has nothing to do with stress. And yet then they bring a reishi mushroom on board for even a couple weeks. Consistency is key. So ideally you take that reishi extract for 3 to 6 weeks to start experiencing it really working in your body. And the symptoms they thought had nothing to do with stress begin to go away. And they're like, oh, I'm sleeping again, or my headaches went away, or I mean, you name it. And so, yeah, there couldn't be a more fitting mushroom for this audience, for the current state of the world we're living in, to really support our stress response, to build and nourish our system from this root level so that the rest of our body can start working again, right? We can go out of airplane mode and start functioning like we were meant to.
So we've got reishi, our chill.
Yes.
And then was there another one? Did you say 2?
Yeah, I'll make this one quicker. I could talk about these mushrooms all day. But lion's mane, it has nothing to do with the mane of a lion. We call it our think mushroom, or lion's mane for your brain. It rhymes, right? Your brain's best friend. And what it does is helps with productivity, creativity, all sorts of cognitive function. But it's activating a hormone called nerve growth factor, which is responsible for basically neural firing within everywhere in our body, but also within the blood-brain barrier. So we have this ability to focus better, and really what all of us, and especially if you're studying or in a program, really could be looking for.
So we're going to look for the reishi, help us chill, the lion's mane, kind of up-level our cognitive function. You mentioned we're going to give this some time. We'll give it a couple weeks. Now, I'm thinking there might be people out there saying, I'm super stressed. Should I drink 10 cups? So if you could just say a little bit about dose.
You really have to know what you're getting to know what dose you're actually ingesting. What I really suggest and recommend is using the mushrooms as nature intended and the way that they've been used for thousands of years. That's where we have the stories, the culture, the research. And so what that means is using the fruiting body or the actual mushroom. So you'll see on labels, it'll either say mushroom, fruiting body, or mycelium, which is basically the root system of the mushroom. So make sure you're getting the actual fruiting body. What it's grown on is really, really critical. So you'll see other ingredients if it's been grown on some sort of cereal or grain, like rice or oat. But these mushrooms, as we mentioned earlier, they grow naturally on trees. So many of their beneficial compounds come from the trees they grow on, right? It's like we are what we eat. The mushrooms are too. So I would really avoid, if you can, supplements that have other ingredients that are a grain, and see if you can get log grown or wild harvested mushrooms. And then extracted, right? So they must be extracted. Sometimes you'll see just dehydrated or fermented or micronized, all these words that are coming out. And so the dosage is not going to be the same if it's been extracted, right? Extracted highly potentizes these species. So if you're getting a log-grown fruiting body that's been extracted, I'd recommend starting with between 500 milligrams and 1,500 milligrams per day. You'll feel it and you'll know how to work with your body to find the right dose. You can build up or down as your body needs, right? Ideally, if you're in an acute state of stress and you start taking reishi every day, you hopefully will be able to no longer be in that state of stress. And so perhaps you might need a lower dose, or at that point you might want to switch to lion's mane, right? Your body is shifting as you're taking them. So switch it up always and keep listening to your body.
So you gave some great tips there. You're educating the audience, and all this information will be in the show notes for you guys. But what I love about Four Sigmatic is you make it so easy, right? So my audience is already under stress, has a ton of stuff to do. They can just go to the website very easily, get something they're already doing, maybe coffee or a latte or the powder to put in a smoothie, and off they go. So maybe you can direct them over. Where would they find that information? Yeah,
absolutely. Thanks for saying that. That's something I love, and why I joined forces with Four Sigmatic several years ago was the ease, right? The convenience, the simplicity. And all of the boxes are checked. So you don't have to do all your research and say, okay, is this the fruiting body? Is this log grown? Is this extracted? We're already doing all of that. And we add them to things that you're already doing. So you really don't even have to think about making sure that you take your mushrooms every day. So like you mentioned, I recommend coffee in the morning or plant-based protein if you make smoothies, or we have a mushroom cacao with reishi. That's a really great evening nightcap to have something sweet if you're used to some sort of evening routine. And we created a special discount code for all of you. And you can go just to foursigmatic.com. Yeah, it's as simple as that.
And the coupon code that Danielle created for us is Happy Doc. That's just Happy DOC. And Danielle, people may think, wow, I've listened to this woman. She's totally resonating with me. You also do have a private practice. And would you like to share your website?
Yeah, so you can find me on DanielleRyanWellness.com or connect with me on social at Danielle Ryan Broida, and would love to keep in touch.
One last thing, Danielle, before we go. If you knew every doctoral student was listening to you right now, what words of wisdom would you have for them, or what would you like them to know?
This is by my mushroom teacher. His name's Peter McCoy, and he's the one that taught me to grow mushrooms. And he says, from this humble position on the edge of the unknown, let us now dive into the world of fungi to find that it is not a complex puzzle that can or will ever be entirely solved, but rather a place of rich complexity, waiting to be experienced, explored, and embraced.
Wow, love that. Check out Four Sigmatic, check out Danielle's website. And Danielle, thank you so much for educating our listeners on the magic of functional mushrooms.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening, and I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. The Happy Doc Student Podcast is brought to you by expandyourhappy.com, and you can learn more there. Oh, and hey, if you want to make my day, would you rate, review, and subscribe to this show? Before I sign off, I do need to remind you, the information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk.